Croatoan? This single word, carved into a wooden post, is the beginning and the end of a great American mystery. It is a quiet testament to a story that has puzzled historians, archaeologists, and curious minds for over 400 years. In the late 16th century, a group of English men, women, children, attempted to build a new home. They numbered 115 souls. They established their settlement on Roanoke Island, behind the barrier islands of what we now call North Carolina. When their governor returned after a long absence, he found nothing but silence and this one cryptic clue. These were families, not just adventurers or soldiers. They brought with them the tools to build the seeds to plant and the dream of creating a society. Their leader, John White, was an artist and a governor who documented people and landscape. His drawings show the faces of the native peoples and the layout of their villages, but his art could not capture what was to come. All 115 of them. There was no sign of a struggle, no evidence of a battle, and no bodies left behind. The houses had been carefully taken down, suggesting an orderly departure. The only message was Croatoan etched into the palisade and CRO carved into a nearby tree. There was no Maltese cross to indicate duress. It was as if they'd packed up their belongings, written a short note of their destination, and walked away into the mists of history. This absence of answers makes the story powerful. It has become a foundational American legend, a ghost story passed down. The empty settlement stands as a monument to their unknown fate. Did they find a new home and blend in? Did they meet a tragic end at enemies or wilderness? Or were they swallowed by the Atlantic? The story of the Roanoke colonists begins with ambition and hope. In 1587, sponsored by the English nobleman Sir Walter Raleigh, the group set sail from England. This was not the first English expedition to these shores, but it was different. This time, the goal was to establish a true colony, a permanent settlement named the City of Raleigh. Among the 115 settlers were 115 settlers, 17 women, 9 children. One of those women, Eleanor Dare, was Governor John White's own daughter. Shortly after their arrival, she gave birth to a baby girl named Virginia Dare, the very first English child born in the Americas. Her birth was a symbol of a new beginning, a sign that this was a place for families to put down roots. Their chosen location was Roanoke Island, a place the English had visited before. It was thought to be a strategic spot, sheltered from the open ocean and offering a base for agriculture and privateering against Spanish treasure fleets. However, life in this new world was far from easy. The colonists arrived too late in the season to plant and harvest a full crop, making them immediately dependent on stored provisions and trade with the local Native American tribes. The soil was sandy, the summer heat was intense, and the local flora and fauna were entirely alien to them. They had to learn how to survive in a landscape that was both beautiful and dangerous, a world that operated by rules they did not yet understand. Relations with the native peoples were complicated from the very start. The English had a mixed history with the local tribes, Secatan, Croatoan. Earlier expeditions had sometimes been met with friendship and curiosity, but they had also been marked by violence and mistrust. The colonists of 1587 inherited this legacy of tension. While they traded with some groups for food, misunderstandings and conflicts arose. The killing of a colonist by natives, who may have been seeking revenge for an earlier English attack, cast a shadow of fear over the settlement. The colonists felt increasingly isolated, surrounded by a wilderness they could not control and people they could not always trust. Despite these hardships, the colonists persevered. They built their homes, constructed a fort for protection, and tried to make a life for themselves. John White's maps and drawings show a community taking shape, a small English village transplanted onto a foreign shore. They were at the very edge of the known world, and their small settlement was a fragile candle flame flickering in the vast, dark expanse of the American continent. As the summer of 1587 drew to a close, the colonists faced a critical situation. Their supplies were dwindling rapidly. The prospect of facing their first winter without adequate provisions was a terrifying one. The initial plan had been for a ship to return to England almost immediately for more supplies, but that had not happened. The colonists knew they could not survive long without support from home. More food, more tools, more livestock, more people. After much debate, they decided someone had to go back to England to plead their case and organize a relief mission. They chose their governor, John White. White was reluctant to leave. His daughter Eleanor, his newborn granddaughter Virginia. He understood the risks of the long sea voyage, and he worried about what might happen to the settlement in his absence. The colonists insisted he was the best person for the job. As governor with connections in London, he had authority and influence to secure aid. He promised he would return as quickly as possible, hopefully by the following spring. It was a solemn vow to his family and his people. Before he departed, the colonists agreed on a secret token. If settlers moved, they would carve the name of their new location into a prominent tree or post. If forced to leave in distress or attack, they would carve a Maltese cross above the name. This simple code would help White find them on his return. John White said his farewells and boarded the ship for England in late August 1587, leaving the 115 colonists to face the unknown. He could never have imagined how long his absence would last. When White arrived in England, the country was on high alert. King Philip II of Spain was preparing the Spanish Armada. Queen Elizabeth already ordered to stay on all shipping and readied vessels for war. White's attempts to secure a ship and supplies were thwarted by the national crisis. The promise to return quickly was broken not by lack of will, but by the gears of war and politics, an ocean away. For 3 long years, John White was trapped in England, consumed by anxiety for his colony. The war with Spain raged on. Every attempt to organize a relief expedition failed. Finally, in 1590, after the defeat of the Spanish Armada, he secured passage on a privateering expedition bound to stop at Roanoke Island. On August 18, 1590, on what would have been his granddaughter Virginia's 3rd birthday, he and his men landed on the island. Approaching the settlement site, they played English tunes on a trumpet, hoping for a joyful reunion. The only answer was the echo of their own music across the silent shore. What they found was an eerie, perplexing scene. The settlement area was now enclosed by a high palisade. Inside the enclosure, houses, cottages dismantled and removed. There were no signs of a battle, no strewn bodies, no skeletons. Heavy iron bars, pieces of lead, other bulky objects lay half-buried in overgrown weeds. It was a ghost town, the biggest clue. Croatoan carved into a main palisade post. CRO carved into a nearby tree. He remembered the plan the colonists had made before he left. Their destination was carved, but there was no Maltese cross. The absence of the distress signal gave him hope. It suggested they had not been attacked or forced out. They had left voluntarily, moving to a new location. Croatoan meant Croatoan Island, now Hatteras Island, home of a friendly Native American tribe led by Chief Manteo. White wanted to sail 50 miles south to Croatoan, but fate intervened. A powerful storm began to brew. Rough seas damaged the ship's anchor cable. The captain, fearing hurricane season, refused to risk his crew. White was forced to abandon the search and return to England, the mystery unsolved. Perhaps the most widely accepted and hopeful theory about the fate of the Roanoke colonists is that they were not lost at all, but rather they were found. The carved word Croatoan points directly to this possibility. The colonists, facing starvation and isolation, decided to leave Roanoke Island and seek refuge with their allies, the Croatoan people. They may have dismantled their homes to reuse timber and materials, packed what they could carry, and made the journey south to what is now Hatteras Island. There they would have gradually integrated with the local tribe, trading their English ways for a life more suited to the American wilderness. This idea is supported by the fact that the colonists left no sign of distress. The absence of the Maltese cross is a powerful piece of evidence. It implies a planned and orderly migration, not a desperate flight. The Croatoan tribe, led by Manteo, had a history of friendly relations with the English. It would have been the most logical place for the colonists to turn for help. Over time, the English settlers might have married into the tribe, learned their language, and adopted their customs for hunting, fishing, farming. Their children and grandchildren would have grown up as members of the community, their English heritage slowly blending with a new Native American identity. Later accounts from the 17th and 18th centuries seem to lend some credence to this theory. John Lawson wrote in 1709 that the Hatteras Indians living on the coast claimed that their ancestors were white people. He noted some tribe members had gray eyes, which they said were passed down from those ancestors. These stories, passed down through generations, suggest a memory of English people joining their society. While not definitive proof, it is compelling anecdotal evidence pointing to survival and assimilation rather than tragedy. Modern archaeological work has continued to explore this possibility. Excavations on Hatteras Island and the mainland have uncovered English artifacts mixed with native pottery and tools. Finds such as pieces of a rapier hilt, a lead pistol shot, and parts of English ceramics suggest that some of the colonists, or at least their belongings, made their way off Roanoke Island. The evidence indicates small groups may have split up and lived in several different native villages. A picture emerges not of a lost colony, but of a colony that adapted, survived, and became part of the American landscape. Another compelling theory suggests that while the colonists did leave Roanoke Island voluntarily, their journey did not end in peaceful assimilation. Instead, they may have faced new dangers that ultimately led to their demise. This theory branches into several possibilities. One is that the entire colony, or a significant portion of it, attempted an inland migration. The original plan for the city of Raleigh had actually been for a location further inland, up the Albemarle Sound. The colonists may have decided to finally follow through with this plan, seeking more fertile land and a location that was less exposed to Spanish ships. If they moved inland, they would have entered a vast and uncharted territory. As a group of over 100 people, including women and children, they would have been slow-moving and vulnerable. They would have encountered numerous other Native American tribes, some of whom may not have been as friendly as the Croatoan. A journey through the dense forests and swamps of coastal North Carolina would have been fraught with peril. They could have succumbed to starvation if their food ran out, fallen victim to diseases for which they had no immunity, or been attacked by a hostile tribe that viewed them as invaders encroaching on their territory. This theory helps to explain why no large, permanent English settlement was ever found. If the colonists were wiped out while on the move, or if they broke into smaller, scattered groups that eventually perished, they would have left behind very little evidence for future explorers to find. Some archaeologists have focused their search on the mainland, following the rivers and estuaries that the colonists might have used as highways. The discovery of a 16th-century signet ring belonging to one Master Kendall at a site on Hatteras Island and other scattered European artifacts inland could support the idea that the colonists broke into smaller groups that traveled to different areas. A more dramatic version of this theory is that the colonists attempted a desperate voyage back to England. After waiting for John White for a year or more, they might have given up hope of his return. Using a small ship left with the colony called a pinnace, they may have tried to brave the Atlantic Ocean on their own. Such a small vessel would have been ill-equipped for the treacherous journey, and it could easily have been lost in a storm without a trace. This would explain the complete disappearance of the entire group, but it does not account for the Croatoan carving, which clearly points to a local destination, not a transatlantic one. While the lack of a distress signal makes it seem unlikely, the theory that the colonists were attacked and killed cannot be entirely dismissed. The world they inhabited was a dangerous one, and they had enemies. One potential aggressor was Spain. The Spanish saw Roanoke as a threat to their claims in the New World. They also feared it as a base for English pirates. A Spanish patrol might have found the colony. They could have destroyed it, or taken settlers prisoner, or killed them. Yet there are no Spanish records of such a victory. That silence from Spanish archives makes the theory less probable. More likely would be conflict with other Native American tribes. The colonists were friendly with the Croatoan, but relations with other, more powerful mainland tribes were strained. Historical accounts point to conflict with the Secatan, whose land the settlers occupied. After John White left, those tensions may have escalated into warfare. A powerful tribe could have attacked, or a coalition of tribes might have done so, but this theory struggles to explain the neatly dismantled houses, and the lack of any signs of struggle or human remains in 1590. One variation combines attack with migration. Maybe they moved to Croatoan Island, then were attacked there. Or they were attacked at Roanoke and survivors fled to Croatoan for safety. That would explain the defensive palisade. Years later at Jamestown, founded 1607, colonists heard Powhatan's stories. He claimed to have attacked and wiped out a group in the Chesapeake, showing English items as proof. That could refer to Roanoke, suggesting they migrated north, not south, and died years later. This is the grimmest picture, violence and tragedy. Their dream ended in bloodshed, far from home, without witnesses. But Jamestown's accounts are secondhand and decades later. Powhatan may have exaggerated or meant another group. Ultimately, the attack theory lacks definitive physical evidence, no mass grave, no widespread signs of battle, to confirm it as the true fate. For centuries the only clues were John White's writings, the single carved word on a post, a folklore tale told around campfires, modern science archaeology unearthing new tangible clues, fragments like puzzle pieces slowly being assembled, moving beyond Roanoke Island, the surrounding mainland barrier islands. Following the Croatoan carving Hatteras Island, ancestral home of the Croatoan archaeologists at work, faience pottery metallurgy, crucible handle sword fragments, gun flints, domestic and personal items suggesting English residents, the variety of objects suggests a community. John White's map, with a patched fort symbol, a fort marked about 50 miles inland, at a junction of two rivers excavations at Site X, Surrey, Hampshire borderware. Pottery, close-up suggesting a small inland group. These discoveries challenge the idea of a single vanished group. Dispersal. Some went south to Hatteras Island, another small group may have traveled west to the mainland, they may have broken into smaller family units integrating into different native communities. These clues don't solve the mystery entirely, but they reshape the story into one of survival adaptation, dispersal, across the landscape. The story of the Lost Colony of Roanoke endures not because we have no answers, but because we have so many possibilities. It is a historical detective story. The trail has gone cold, but the clues continue to fascinate us. The mystery matters today because it touches on fundamental themes of the American experience: the courage to venture into the unknown, the struggle for survival in a new land, the complex and often tragic encounter between European and Native American worlds. The fate of the 115 colonists, including the infant Virginia Dare, is a powerful and haunting reminder of life's fragility and the immense risks of the first pioneers. The story teaches us about the nature of history itself. History is not always neat and tidy. Sometimes, it is a collection of fragments, whispers, and unanswered questions. The Roanoke mystery shows how we construct the past from limited evidence. A carved word, a hidden mark on a map, a shard of pottery dug from the earth. Each new discovery can shift perspective but may never give a final, complete answer. This uncertainty keeps the story alive, inviting each generation to examine the evidence and wonder. The story also compels us to consider native perspectives. The Croatoan, the Secatan, other tribes. The theory of assimilation offers a different view: native hospitality and cultural exchange. The search is also a search for a deeper understanding of native communities, their oral traditions, and archaeological heritage. Ultimately, the 115 colonists were people, not just a statistic. Parents, children, husbands, wives. Their story is profoundly human. Whether they blended into native society, perished in the wilderness, or met some other unknown fate, their legacy is woven into America. They represent dreamers, adventurers, lost souls, and so we are left where we began: a silent shore and a single, enigmatic word. The mystery lingers across the centuries, posing the timeless question: what becomes of a people when they disappear from history?